Do you ever look at a space and think, man, this space is really oddly satisfying? Because I do, but sometimes it's hard to place why exactly that thing is satisfying. So in today's video, I want to tell you about some things I find oddly satisfying in interior design, and if you also find them oddly satisfying, then maybe they could be ideas for you to use in your own home. Okay, without further ado, let's start with the first one, which is articulated sconces. So sconces of any kind generally will make a space feel better. They're kind of the MSG of interior design. But for some reason, I find articulated sconces particularly satisfying. So an articulated sconce is any sconce with some kind of hinge to it, some kind of elbow. For some reason, I find these look particularly good in spaces. I think it's something about how the joint creates a sort of a sculptural quality to the actual light fixture itself. You'll often see these used in bedrooms above or to the side of headboards, and I think that's a really great use of them. So if you're looking to add a sort of sculptural, interesting element to a room, think about using an articulated sconce. All right, number two is paintings in front of bookshelves. This one is a little controversial. Some people think it's really stupid because obviously it makes it harder to get the books out of the bookshelf. But personally, I love this look and I think it's really hard to go wrong with it, to be honest. It literally is the definition of layering. So interior designers like to talk about how they design layered spaces, and what layering basically means is that you can see stuff beyond other stuff. And so by putting paintings in front of bookshelves, you're layering those elements in front of each other, and it just creates a very visually dynamic and interesting space. I think this looks great with antique art and prints if you're going for more of a traditional look, but actually adding some modern art in front of bookshelves also is a really dynamic look because bookshelves inherently feel a little bit more traditional and formal. So hanging some modern art in front of it creates a great amount of tension and a very dynamic looking space. So big fan of this one, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, number three is indoor trees. Plant life in general will make a space feel better. Adding a bit of greenery and nature to a space nearly always makes a space look better, and it's quite hard to go wrong. But there's something particularly satisfying when people commit to the tree. I think because trees are so large and they occupy such a large footprint on the ground, when somebody takes the leap and commits to a tree inside their space, it just creates so much visual impact. It's tall, it's big, it fills the space really well, it draws the eye up, and I just think indoor trees are really special. If you want to do an indoor tree in your own space, there's a few different routes you can take. Trendy trees of the past have been the fiddle leaf fig, quite famously, was very popular, and I still think it's an okay look today if you're into it. Over recent years, we've seen more olive trees taking the place of the fiddle leaf fig, and I think that's a good look as well. In really high-end design, they use a very specific type of olive tree. It's the black olive tree. It looks like this. A lot of very high-end interior designers like to put this tree in their space because it has these very tiny, dainty green leaves, which sort of don't distract from any of the pieces and finishes that are behind it. And so I think a lot of interior designers love this tree. However, if you want to get this tree in your own space, it turns out it's really difficult to keep alive and look after. It's quite impractical actually to grow indoors. So you might want to go for another variety of tree that grows better indoors. I think what makes an indoor tree so great is that it has to be a very thought out and deliberate choice. Like you can't just randomly put a massive tree in your room and not have thought it through. I think when most people are looking for something to fill a corner and they want something that's tall, the easier thing to do is to go for some kind of bookshelf or tall storage unit, or maybe a gallery wall that goes all the way up to the ceiling. And while I think those things are fine ways to decorate a space, it does take quite a bit of bravery to go, nope, instead I'm going to fill this pretty large area of the room with a big tree. And I think that confidence comes across when people look at a space with a big tree in it. It just looks very intentional and really great. And the fourth and final one I want to talk about is fabric behind cupboard doors. I think this is such an interesting look. Again, it's an easy way to add an extra element of layering to a space. The reason why this is such a useful tool in interior design is because, practically speaking, closed cabinetry is the most practical. It keeps the dust out, it keeps the mess away, you don't have to organize things neatly, and all the storage is usable. However, if you have all closed doors and it takes up an entire wall full of closed doors, it can feel quite heavy and overwhelming and actually quite boring to look at when you're just looking at door after door after door. So how do you add an extra element of layering to this space? How do you add another finish into this space to make it look a little bit softer and a little bit more interesting? Well, this is one approach that you can take. You can put fabric behind the glass doors, and suddenly you're going from a solid door to having two layers, two interesting different finishes. I just think it's a really great more soft and comfortable look. It does look quite traditional, so if your space isn't very traditional, then this would look maybe a little bit out of place. Though maybe you could experiment with a really modern pattern on your fabric, and that might be an interesting design choice to make. But if you do have a space that is a little bit more traditional or that lends itself to a more traditional interior design style, I think that this is a really great look. So those are some things that I'm finding oddly satisfying in interior design right now. Do you agree with me? Yes, no, maybe so? Are there any other things that you find oddly satisfying in interior design? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Come here. Come here. Yeah. Who's a good boy? No, don't eat the leaf.